What's going on, Canes fans? You're back with another episode of the Crude on the U, brought to you by the Scoop on the U. I got my co-host Luke Cheney from All Hurricanes. He's always going to be here with me every week. Like I said, you got to deal with our ugly faces. But this week, guys, we have got a legend in the recruiting game. We have got a man who's been in the game for over 50 years. Luke, go ahead and introduce him to the fans.
Yeah, we have, as you mentioned, absolute legend, Larry Blustein. How you doing, man?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me in. I appreciate it, and I'm excited about being on your show. And I watch it, whenever I can. It's just I kind of busy. Tonight I was even watching a lot of film. There's some kids that I wanted to see, and I try to get everywhere I can go. But sometimes you can't be everywhere live. And what I do is my game plan for the last 10 years was to go to all the camps from Pensacola to Gainesville and all that to see the rest of the state, because during the season, no other area has the games that we have every week, and I don't want to be missing some of those contests. So, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here, and and after the last, it's just, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, is you take over a program in 1 year, and the expectations become higher and higher and higher until you play games. And then you understand that, everything can't be done in 1 year. But watching the Texas A&M game the other night, I know that two things. One thing is Alabama's going to crush Texas A&M. I mean, I just don't think and shame on him, because he's had 5 years to build that program and then get things going. And then the second thing, in 2 years, Texas A&M won't even want to come next to Miami, because what Coach Cristobal is doing is, as far as stockpiling talent, with the great coaching that he has. And that's the one thing that the fans have to understand. And I know they're taking shots at everybody now. And you have to think that a guy like Tyler Van Dyke just doesn't go south in 1 year. I mean, there has to be reasons. Last year he had Harley and Rambo to throw to, and at least they opened up the field and they got upfield. And then this year really doesn't have anybody in his main weapon, which everybody has always wanted to cut down and say he's too small and this and that. Restrepo, who is the heart and soul of that receiving corps. So, and I saw the quote that Tyler had about, the atmosphere is not that great. Well, he's right. I mean, you look at a Florida or one of those schools, and they'll play Southwest Missouri State, and they'll still get 74,000. Miami needs to step up their game, just because of the fact that you need to support these guys instead of sitting home and criticizing. You should go out and support the team. And I think if Miami, obviously the crowd won't be that much this week because it's Middle Tennessee State and a lot of people don't know them, but it shouldn't matter. But, going on that theme, you had Bethune-Cookman, who nobody really, it wasn't and they had a great crowd comparatively to the last game against Southern Mississippi. So I understand where Tyler's coming from, and I don't think the fans should, say, oh, if you don't like it, go someplace else. I mean, that's just not a good attitude to take. He's got a right to voice his opinion, just like you and I and everybody else. So, but other than that, I just think that recruiting wise, everybody I talk to, all the kids, all the coaches that I get a chance to talk to, they're excited, about the future of this program. They're not going to judge it off 1, 2, or 3 games. They're going to judge it on what's coming in for next year. And, I mean, and look at last year at this time, after, when Mario was brought in, they didn't have all these guys who came in the transfer portal, the Caleb Johnsons and players like that. So things change. Things can change. Look at FSU. Everybody, they're going to be 2-10, but because they got, a lot of kids in the transfer portal and they're making plays, things change, and then people have to face up to it and not be so critical, and, and then not think because somebody like a Flag is only 5'11" and 195 or 200 that he can't make plays. He's as good a playmaker as you're going to find. It's just that the fans got to stop being so critical on these kids and just, be supportive.
I can blame myself. I've been a little critical, and I've had to take a step back, understanding that the transition that takes place, is a genuine and true transition.
Right.
And the cupboard that Diaz left wasn't completely bare, but it sure as heck needed a little TLC. It needed a little, it needed revamping is what it needed pretty much.
Sure.
So, I mean, I understand this, approach of where one game definitely isn't going to change recruits' minds. I'm glad to see that they have that mindset. We don't want recruits to just fly off the handle and just, we'll make an assumption off of something like that, because that's honestly not thinking it through. It really isn't. You want a kid who's going to think it through and be firmly grounded in the choice that he makes in the school and want to be there for the next 2 to 4 years or whatever it is. So I totally get what you're saying there.
You would hope, but Luke will tell you, if you're a young guy, you're impressionable and things are going to, bounce off you, instinctively and say, but I talked to a lot of the kids that are committed after the game the other night that I know, and we talked, and it's like big deal, because this is a long run. And like I said, within 2 years, you see all the advancements that have been made just in the last 6-7 months, coaching staff, new players in different positions. It's just that right now Miami's not a deep team, and people have to understand. See, that's why A&M should be more embarrassed than anything else, because they should be in a position where they should have 2 and 3 of everybody. They've had that 5-year cycle under Jimbo Fisher, and so I think that you take a look at Mario Cristobal. He's a prideful guy, and he found a silver lining in everything. And you look at, like I said, like the other night we were talking about statistics in the game, and they always say stats don't lie. But in this game, Miami just overwhelmed them, as far as offense. They just, when they got into the red zone, they were 0 for 5 as far as scoring touchdowns. So that can't be, but you know what? It'll improve. And, we could sit here, and I'm sure that Coach Cristobal, when they got back there, he probably never went to sleep on Sunday morning, just, watching film and watching everything that could have been. And to me, you're going to pick out different things. And the one glaring thing on offense is you're lacking those playmakers. So what you need to do is find some new ones. If somebody's not working, then, let somebody like a Skinner, who I know that a lot of people were asking about, or Romello Brinson, or somebody who, has an opportunity, because of what you're doing now. We're not getting them to the right positions. I think what he did with Will Mallory and spreading them out was perfect. I do that too. And you bring Arroyo in as a tight end, and then that way you have a 6'5", kid on the outside, may not have sprinter speed, but cornerbacks will have a freak of a time because he's a big body guy. And, they're just not used to that. It's like a Calvin Johnson on the outside. And then you got to get your running backs out of the backfield and catch. Rooster's the type of guy that when he gets out of the backfield, he's dangerous. And you pair him on a safety or a linebacker, you got to be kidding me. He's going to shred him. And that's the thing I'd like to see more of, even if they have to do it this week. I'm tired of the two things. I'm tired of saying that the best team didn't win, because evidently if the best team, the better team won that night, A&M wouldn't have won the game. You could look at stats and point this and that, but they won the game. So you can't say, oh, well, the better team lost, because they didn't, or they would have won. And the other thing is talking so much about the, about these guys and if we did this, if we did that, people are saying, well, how come they're not playing this guy? Don't you think that Mario Cristobal and his staff would play the best players? What do you think? They're out to sabotage the damn team? They're not. They're going to look in practice, Luke, and they're going to say, well, you know what? He had a great practice. He's going to start. And because if he doesn't, then Mario's kind of ruining his own motto, as you practice how you play. Yeah. So, got to give that person who practiced well. And that's why you look at the Restrepos and James Williams and players like that who go hard in practice, that it translates to the game. Now they got to get more of those guys. And I think the schedule is kind of favorable for them. They, like I said, they're home, the next 2 games before going on the road. They got the week off to work on things and before North Carolina and after Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned with Jaleel Skinner.
Yeah.
Really want to see how he just continues to evolve this season within the offense. I mean, Coach Cristobal mentioned today how he's a player that they're trying to work in more into the offense.
Yeah.
He mentioned how he's been working, as an inline tight end off the ball, out wide. And I mean, even though he didn't play much against A&M, I definitely could see someone taking those out wide receiver reps with Jacoby out, at least for the time being. Just given how much of a mismatch advantage that he has. I mean, he's 6'5" and he runs like a wide receiver.
Yeah, and I see where he said that I kind of I kind of agree, that Arroyo really potential wise, I mean, he's a gamer, I mean, you get the ball to him as much as possible, but you can't throw away a 6'5" tight end who has so much potential, and if you look back over the last 2 years, some of his best plays have been called back. The touchdown against Louisville went for 78 yards and they called it back way away from, so those things, and you'd hate to see, and I don't think you're going to see it this much under this regime, but look at all the players, back to Sam Shields and Chantrell Henderson, who excelled at the NFL level when they didn't really get it done here. You don't want to see that. You don't want to start seeing where, this guy was, okay for Miami, but then all of a sudden he gets to the Buffalo Bills and he starts like 42 games. Or if he goes to the Green Bay Packers and he goes to a Super Bowl. See that stuff, and I don't think that's going to happen now because this coaching staff will maximize everybody who's on that roster. Believe me. I mean, and that's the one thing when I talked with Coach Cristobal when he first got here, and he had asked me, he says, what do you think the problem is, because you get some good kids at this school. I said, they're not getting coached up. I think that the coaches took them to a certain level and didn't go beyond that. And I think that's definitely what happened because you look at a lot of these guys that have come on and, the Roziers. And, okay, here's a perfect example. You got two running backs and DJ Dallas and the kid, the other kid from Palm Beach that are both playing with the Seattle Seahawks.
Homer,
Yeah, Homer. So, I mean, that's what I'm trying to say, And, they did – DJ did a really good job. But, I mean, and he wasn't here that long. So that's what's got to happen, I think. Miami, needs to be in a situation where they're developing kids. And they've got a lot of talent that's on board now. And I think this next class is, as you guys alluded to, I think it's a banner class. It's a top 10 class.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big believer in coaches getting in their players before I truly judge them. We know when you're coaching somebody else's roster, you're coaching 85% of somebody else's roster that you didn't pick out, that you didn't recruit. I give them those 2 to 3 years to really let those guys get involved because I think that's important because, I mean, matches everything, fits and systems and stuff. It's everything.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to put we've used the term before, but if you're trying to put a square peg into a round hole, it's not going to fit. We got to get Cristobal's guys, Gaddis's guys, Steele's guys. And that's when I think we start to see improvement. Or at least the guys who are young enough that they can build up on their own, that didn't get a chance really under the Diaz system, that they can kind of take under their wing and almost be as recruits for them, Chase Smith type players.
It sounds great, but the fans who've been kind of scoring the last 20 years, they're tired of pushing the reset button. So I can understand where there's a lot of frustration, but I say, and I've said all along, give this current regime 2 good recruiting classes, this 2013 class, this 2022-3 class and the 2024 class, and you're going to see a difference because they're going to have talent. And then once they get, they're doing what they can do. Like you said, this isn't their recruiting class, but they're taking a lot of them and transforming them because that if Cristobal was here, they'd still recruit Tyler Van Dyke. They'd still recruit a Restrepo just because of the way he is. And, he loves gamers, and that's the thing. I don't care, what their size is, but the end result is production. And I've always said that, you look at Zach Thomas from the Dolphins. 5'8", 222 pounds, running at a 4.65, 4.7 coming out of high school. And nowadays he may not even be invited to a combine, but yet he's on the verge of going into the NFL Hall of Fame. So you have to be able to know your recruiting. You have to be able to, and I laugh because I've been doing this so long that you have to see the kids. And, because anybody could look at a film and say, well, that kid's fast or he catches a ball. But what if his character's poor? It could ruin the whole team. To me, the X's and O's of the game are important, but you can see that from film. What you can't see is, and it reminds me of a story that, because I was really close with Teddy Bridgewater, coming out of high school and youth football, and I've known Teddy for a long time. And the one thing that I had mentioned to Teddy, I think it was during the end of a sophomore year, when he came out of the game, he would go over by himself, and just throw rocks or whatever he was doing. And I said, Teddy, what you need to do now is you need to be with your receivers. You need to be plotting out what you're going to do and the next thing. You don't need to be over here by yourself because, a college coach is going to see that you're not in the game. And I don't care how talented you are, that type of thing could, be a red mark against you. And he heeded that advice and, he cashed 2 pretty good contracts in the NFL.
Before we move on here, Norman, thank you for the $10 donation. He says, excellent show, gentlemen. We all 3 appreciate that. Thank you, Norman. Well, if you guys don't mind here, I was figuring we'd move on into this 2023 Miami Hurricanes class and kind of get some of Larry's, some of his takes on some of our players here and see what we can stir up.
Okay, fire away.
I figure the best place to start is quarterback. Why the heck not, right? How familiar are you with Jaden Rashada?
Saw Jaden, during the 7-on-7 season. Watched hours and hours of film. He's the guy. He's really the guy. I mean, he's one of those top level kids that if you're at one of those Alabamas or any of those other schools that you really would pursue because makes all the throws, runs real well. He's a big kid. And he's, for a young guy, he has a real grasp of being a leader. And there's no doubt that when Miami landed him, you got a guy that's going to come in here and battle. Obviously, you have a couple of kids that are on hand here that were recruited, in the other regime, but both of them are really, really good, But, yeah, I think he's the winner.
What do you think about Emory Williams joining Jaden in this class?
Well, I kind of and I don't take credit for much, but I was kind of the guy that discovered him at FSU camp, and I had told a bunch of people at the time. And then all of a sudden, everyone started watching him, and Frank Ponce said, got a chance to go up and watch him. And I remember talking with him, and he goes, "Oh yeah, he makes all the throws." But the whole thing is he's not Jaden Rashada. He's going to be a guy that's going to come in and be another guy to compete and just in case type of guys. I mean, right now he's not at that level. I mean, he may be someday, but he throws well. But like I said, like Peyton Matochin, I got a chance to see Peyton in high school. Nice, very nice, good size. But you could tell he wasn't the guy. He would have come in and made a little bit of an impact. But I think that's the same thing with Emory.
Is there any local sleepers that have stood out to you that you're kind of surprised haven't gotten as much attention yet?
Well, there's a few. Well, and Luke will tell you the kid from Chaminade, and we watched him, Edwin Joseph. I don't think he got a lot of play. He is now, but that's because the kid plays 90,000 different positions, and he'll never come off the field. And you know what? He's as good as any corner, but at the same time, he makes more clutch catches than anybody. And, on that onside kick to end the game last week, he was the one that recovered it. He's definitely the guy. I mean, to me, there's a lot of guys without Jamari Ford, who's short. And if he was 2-3 inches taller, he would be probably the premier running back, in South Florida, one of the premier backs. So, I don't think there's a lot of guys that right now, because of the way that recruiting is, especially locally, that, there's 100 guys that go and cover games now. And, I mean, you see guys like Luke and Frank and all these guys on the sideline. So they're not missing a lot. But there's kids that are late bloomers that I think the world of the defensive tackle from Chaminade, the Pert kid. I mean, the guy's got 9 sacks in 4 games, and he's a legit guy, especially when you remember that they lost both of their defensive ends, one to Ohio State and one to UCF from last year. So, and he makes plays against Dillard. He kind of really won the game defensively for him. Guys like that, you look and you start, Miami has some really good coaches, and I ran into basically all of them during the spring, one way or another. And, you sit there and you talk, and I've known Charlie Strong for a long, long time. And we talk, and, you look at a guy like Washington, and, you watch him play linebacker, and he's good. He's not right now. He's got a lot to learn, but I'll tell you, he impressed me in a couple of the games that he played this year. When he played against Chaminade, played against Cardinal Gibbons in those kickoff classics, he showed a lot more instinctive nature towards him. I thought that Stanquan Clark, when they played together at Killian during the spring, I think there was like a kind of a wake-up call to fans, because here's Stanquan Clark, a converted safety who has instincts, who's quick, and can turn a game around, again, standing next to a guy who is more physically put together in Washington, but the knowledge of football were at 2 different levels. And I think that as Bobby becomes more of a student, he's got physical ability, and he could come in here within the next couple of years and help a lot. And if you asked me that back in, I don't know, May, I probably would have had a different answer, but having a chance, and that's what I'm saying. You could watch all the film you want, but until you see somebody up close and personal and watch what they do and watch what they bring to the, to the table, then you got to kind of hold off on your comments.
Yeah. I mean, I was at the Chaminade game, as you said, and I mean, just Edwin Joseph, first time I've had the chance of, watching him play in person, and he just makes plays. I mean, just involved in the screen game. He had that big time reception down the middle, 25 yards, probably the catch of the day. He had that big time touchdown reception. He had that interception. He just makes plays. And he just, projection wise, you could see him being a quality Power 5 player at wide receiver and at cornerback. I mean, there's not many guys who you could label as that, but he's truly just such a versatile player. And I mean, it's awesome that he's been receiving so much love as of late from, obviously Miami, but Florida State. I know he also got that Louisville offer pretty recently. And just kind of touch on Chaminade real quick. Chris Ewald, 2025 corner, a lot of hype behind him. He's someone that, drew the Brandon Innes matchup a little bit on Friday. Granted, he didn't guard him the whole game, but he played pretty well. I mean, I know Rivals has him, I think, as a number 35 player in their initial top 100 rankings. Just because, you've been able to watch Chaminade more than I have. What have you seen from Chris? And I guess where do you see his potential as a sophomore?
I did a profile on him today as we speak, because I was looking at some of the younger players, him and Malachi, who I think is going to be a freak of a receiver for a kid that's in the 9th grade. But the thing about Chris is you got to remember, Chris started as an 8th grader all the way back in the day at University School and the True Prep. And then he came over to Chaminade, and I'll tell you, he's got size. The only thing that he may lack is experience, but he's going to pick that up. You got to remember, he's just a sophomore. So he's got 2.5 years more to refine his game. And I agree with you. He's one of the top 20-25 kids in the state easily at that position. And he's only going to get better, because remember, in practice is where you really probably get better. And you couldn't think of 2 better receivers that he's going to go against for the next 2 years. Obviously with Smith, the big time guy, and then you take a look at Trader, and then you have to put up with Edwin. And so I agree. I think he's going to be really good. And I think he's a Power 5 guy that Miami needs to bring in immediately.
Yeah. And I completely agree with what you're saying. And then just, one of the names that's been talked about a lot amongst Miami fans in recruiting, running back Chris Johnson. I've been able to, I haven't been able to watch him in person yet. We'll definitely try to go to a Diller game later this season, but been able to watch some of this film. Obviously, a phenomenal pass catcher out of the backfield. I've labeled him as, a 4-star who, if he were to come to, go to Miami, that would be a 5-star fit, because I really see him in kind of that Jalen Knighton role, someone who can, excel in those like outside wide zone schemes, play some receiver if asked to, whether in the slot or on the outside. What have you liked from Chris Johnson? And I guess, how would you profile him as a player?
Well, when I first started watching him during the spring, he was like that one-trick pony. If he got past the line of scrimmage, his number will get smaller and smaller because he's that fast.
Yeah.
But then I watched him. I saw him when they played against Chaminade, and I said to myself, you know what? He makes great cuts. He's got good vision. And if he displays more and more of that and just works, he works with a couple of people who I know, who are good running backs who have been there, done that. If he learns more and more of that, gains more instinct, he may be as good as anybody in the country. Because how many backs you're going to get that are world-class sprinters? You have 4.36, 4.37 type kid. Yeah. I mean, and that means against anybody. St. Thomas, and that's why I'm saying, he's the type of guy that, he's more than a one-cut guy now. He's getting more vision to him. He's getting more instinctual. You get him out of the backfield, as you mentioned, on pass plays. I mean, he's going to murder people. It's just like I brought up about Jalen Knighton. If you get Jalen out there with a linebacker or a safety, it's useless because their speed is just too good. And Chris is like that. And the thing that I like about him is now he's got a little bit of vision to him. Before, he just ran towards a hole and he wasn't looking on the sides or anything like that because, there's something that has to be said about kids who grow up in an environment where you're so fast and you're so faster than everybody else, just like a linebacker. If you get a guy, and I remember Jonathan Vilma, who had to learn a lot when he came in because he was just so used to pushing people and them going down. See, now at this next level, you got to wrap up. So he just has to make a few adjustments. Miami could bring him in for this next class. That's a huge get. I mean, you got to remember, Miami's got when healthy, their running back room could be as good as anybody's. I mean, they got a lot of talent. So, yeah, he would be another guy to bring in this next class that will compete because, as we know, and I was kind of disappointed too that they didn't run what's his name more the other day, the big back. Thad Franklin, Thad Franklin, because that's a guy you need. I mean, you see that people don't understand. When you have receivers, you have different ones. You have your slots. You have your guys that spread the field. You have guys with amazing hands, like the Rambo type of guys who get open and can catch. And then you got the same thing as a running back. You have a guy like Thad Franklin. He from 20 yards in, he'll wear you down all the game. He'll hit the hole. He'll wear down the linebackers. And then if he breaks out and there's a safety, he'll torture them all day because he's a big back. So that's the thing that Miami has to build towards. Same thing on the offensive line. You have guys who probably pass protect a lot better than they run block. So you got to combine that. That's why it's called a team. And not everybody can come in and excel. Like you look at like the Miami Dolphins, where they have a guy like Gesicki, who's a pass catcher, and then Smythe, who's a run block. He blocks. Everybody has different facets. You can't have a bunch of the same guys. So, but fans don't understand that. They just want these guys to do everything, and they don't always do everything. And if they don't have anybody to compliment them, I know you guys are a little bit younger to remember H.B. Blades when he played. Here's a guy, he played in the NFL for 6-7 years. He played at the University of Pittsburgh, but he was never, if he had to be on an island by himself, he was never really good because he wasn't that quick. But if you funneled the play towards him, he never missed a tackle. So there's functions for everybody, like I bring up Flag. Everybody, oh, well, he's a little guy. Yeah, but he's around the ball. So you need a guy like that. You're going to get your bigger, the Caleb Johnsons. You're going to get bigger linebackers, in the mix. So that's why I look and sometimes I've learned all these years. I used to, kind of like fight back and tell people, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. But now I just kind of let them, because everybody's a fan and everybody's a critic, and I can understand. I don't want to take that away from people there, because you guys, like you guys and everybody, your opinions are your opinions. But sometimes you have to go further and understand that there's more to what's on the surface. And, that's the thing that I get, upset about sometimes, because like in this Tyler Van Dyke thing, I'm watching all day yesterday and today where people, I hate that guy. And why is he saying this? And he does. See, that's what I'm saying. If you're a fan, you're a fan. I mean, you sat there for the last 20 years and you've been average. So you know what? What's another year or two to be a team that's going to build? You gotta stick with them, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, going through my Twitter timeline throughout the game. Yeah, I mean, obviously, fans are going to be reactionary and hot takes during games themselves, but I've just seen too many, bench Tyler, start Jake.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, that's Tyler's the guy who you can make an argument was the best quarterback in college football over the second half of last season.
No doubt.
And to just give him time in this system. I mean, just give him time in this system. Let him get more accustomed with the offense itself. Let the passing offense grow with Tyler. Let him kind of work out this funk that he I guess seems to be in. And just let him build chemistry with his receivers. I mean, but anyways, it's just kind of stick with the running backs in South Florida.
Yeah.
One of the guys that you mentioned, Jamari Ford, one of the most explosive playmakers, explosive kickoff returners, in South Florida. One running back that I like a lot, Byron Lewis from Heritage.
Ninth grade.
Yeah. I mean, someone that I guess really doesn't get as much love just because he's, obviously sharing the workload with Mark Fletcher, who is just a bulldozer. But who are some of the I guess the sleeper running backs that don't get talked about enough in South Florida that are worth mentioning?
Well, there's a couple of them. I mean, one, obviously, he had a great game last week, and he's on his way to Stanford, and that's Cedric Irvin Jr.
Mm-hmm.
I really, when he was at Gulliver, I liked him. I didn't love him, but his game against Tampa Jesuit really changed my mind. He did so much well. And like I said, Miami really never got in him. The kid, Jamari Holtzclaw from Coconut Creek, is way under the radar. Also Sands from St. Thomas Aquinas, a big back who can catch the ball out of the backfield. I mean, you take a look at the kid Moulton from Cardinal Gibbons, who I like a lot. Obviously, he committed to FAU. But see, that's the thing. A lot of these guys, because they don't want to mess with the Power 5 schools and, be in that pecking order. And, if we don't get this guy, we'll take you. And a lot of the kids don't want it. They want to be a priority. And, that's why a lot of these guys will commit to schools that you don't think, so, I mean, we don't have an amazing amount of backs, but we have some really good ones, guys that are, definitely making strides. Obviously, you have Ian Pope as a little back at Central who is really fast. He'll end up at a school where, and then also the running back from Miami Norland, who I think the world of. I just think that he's still hurting. I know he committed to Georgia Tech, but, we have really good backs. It's just, to try to find – I think Miami really in this class should only take one. Did they lose anybody? I don't think they lose anybody out of this class, do they?
No, I mean, I really see them keen in on Chris Johnson and calling it a class. I mean, just
yeah. So I pretty much Luke waste more effort on getting more offensive linemen, and I know they have a couple of really good ones coming in this class, and the 23 class that we were just talking about. I mean, with guys like the Francis Mauagoa, who I had an opportunity to watch during the summer. I mean, how can you not like a big body type of guy like that? He got big hands. I know that he and Bain went at it pretty good when the two played. I mean, you look at him, and then you look at the other kid that the Connor Liu kid. If you watch him, he reminds me of a guy that Miami used to have, Ty Wise, really athletic type of center type guy. And, I think the world of him. Tommy Kinsler, is another guy who I think is going to do some really good things. And then Frankie Tinalau, who, came from Australia, but has an opportunity to do some things over here. So I think that's where Miami should keep on keeping on as far as their recruiting, is get on that line, get on both sides of the line of scrimmage and build that fortress. Because I don't know if, back in the day, I think when USC and Miami both went on probation, what USC did was get 5-star linemen and a couple of 2-star backs, where Miami went after Duke Johnson and some of the other 5-star, but they never worried about the offensive line. And that's why they were, 5'5", 5'7", 6'6" type of team. So when you understand that the offensive line and the defensive line is the recipe for success, you try to build there. And I think Miami's, I know, because with Maribel and Mario being more line or offensive line oriented, you're going to get, that's where a lot of their deals are going to be made. Sure, they got to shore up the wide receiver position. I think Nathaniel Joseph is going to be a big time kid. He's shown since he was in 8th grade. And then the thing to me, Miami's definitely has a chance to turn into tight end U, because the kids that they got coming in this next class are off the charts. I mean, all of them. And I had to get a chance to see the kid Williams at IMG and Reed McKeska and players like that. So, yeah, I just think that Miami, and then obviously secondary-wise, they missed out on a few kids that they wanted. But you know what? What are they, 10th or 11th in the nation in recruiting? That's not so terrible. I mean, and we still have a ways to go. They still have more scholarships to give. So, and then the portal kind of helps. They've been very fortunate with the portal, since Manny started that. But I think Mario will continue it, bring in kids where needed, and I think they're going to concentrate. The offensive line, you could develop a lot of kids, but you also have to have some veteran guys who've been there. Same thing on the defensive line. You're fortunate to get a guy like Lichtenstein to come. I remember watching him at Cypress Bay. A guy who's a good pass rusher, and that's what they need. I mean, you look already with the kid Mesidor, who was a freak at West Virginia, and I think when healthy, and he showed against Bethune. I know it's Bethune. That he has an opportunity to be special. So that's what Miami needs to do, and not just the 23, but the 24 classes is stockpile. I'd love to see him get a Bain, because Bain is like Leonard Taylor in the fact that he's a plug-and-play type of kid. He's can get in there, and sure, he's got a lot to learn. Because look at Nigel Lee Kelly. I mean, here's a guy who's a year away from being a star, really, because the kid's an athletic guy. He's strong, he's intelligent, and he and Wesley Bassint are those type of guys that Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State go after. So it's good to see that Miami's coming away with guys like that, which is a great signal. And I know most of them are 17 years old now, but they'll be 19 and 20 before you know it.
Well, I want to jump over. We haven't talked about it yet. I want to jump over the wide receiver position, because I feel like we picked up a pretty vital piece in Nathaniel Joseph, especially in this era of football for yards after the catch.
Yeah.
What do you see that Nathaniel Joseph offers the University of Miami?
Well, again, having an opportunity to see him since the youth football, because his cousin Flex Joseph is a running back at FIU. So I kind of know that family, Northside Optimist, and, guys that really have made a difference over the years. He's a great kid. You get him in space and he'll beat you every time. He's a guy that you could either run inside or outside. I know he's not as big as a lot of people like, but it doesn't matter. Again, if you can get open and like he does, and he knows how, he's a kid who, like he and Robbie Washington, to get in a slot position. I mean, you want to get Robbie Washington type guys, you want to get the ball in their hands as much as possible, because they know how to run. They have jets. But to answer your question, I think Nathaniel right now is one of the key pickups for 2023. He's kind of a homeboy. He likes to stay. His family's all down here. They're real supportive. I know the family extremely well, and like I said, he's a guy that really adds to this this recruiting class in a major way. And that's why, Miami worked so hard to flip him from Clemson. I was there up in the Palm Beaches when they played, in that May, whatever it was like a spring games. And here's Coach Gaddis, who was there from the beginning to the end. And he stayed there right to the end, watching him, showing him, hey, even though Clemson coach was there, I think Coach Gaddis outlasted him. And I think that really won Ray over because of the fact that, all kids and everybody in this world likes to be loved. And certainly if you see that, you kind of feel flattered that, a guy who is arguably one of the best assistant coaches in the country last year is spending time watching you. And he wasn't watching anybody else. There was no one else out there that Miami really was interested in. And he stayed there. Charlie Strong, Coach Steele were there from kickoff to the end of the 10 hours in a lightning delay.
Before I move on, I want to thank Tyler Van Dyme Season for the $27.99 donation. Thank you very much. We definitely appreciate it, dude. Thank you for always tuning into the show and just thanks for your support in general, man. We really appreciate it. There's a wide receiver that's getting some talk right now about the University of Miami, and there's a lot of question marks surrounding him as far as, how much is Miami pushing for him, or is he really a guy that we're going to want to add to the class? And that is Tyler Williams out of Lakeland. What do you think about him?
I love him. He's a really good-looking kid. I got a chance to see him last year and then again this summer. He's a pass catcher. He's a guy that will get out there. He'll give you everything. That's a great program. He's been coached extremely well. He's got a lot of good guys like Cormani McLean to go against in practice. And so he ups his game. Anytime you have, that's why I always said, when you take a look at a defensive backfield, like Chaminade has, they're always going to get better because of the receivers that they go against in practice. And that's really how come St. Thomas has been so good over these years, because their second teamers are as good as a lot of people, So, and I think with him, he's had an opportunity to grow and develop. Went to quite a few camps this summer, and everybody loved him because he catches the ball. He's a good sized guy, and I got a chance to sit down with him when I went to one of the camps that he was at the University of Florida, and he was, a good guy, a really good guy, and he wants to make the decision based on what's going to be best for him. And, Miami would be a great opportunity, especially with the quarterbacks that they're bringing in, with the tight ends that they have, with the attitude of an offense. And, I always said this, about the same thing with Lashley. Lashley knows his stuff. He's going to end up with a head coaching job, and he did at SMU. Well, same thing with, with Gaddis. He deserves an opportunity to be a head coach. But while he's here, you got to utilize him in a way where, like Coach Ponce, who I've known since he was a 10th grade quarterback at Miami High. And he's always been a student of the game. But what he's doing now is he's watching Gaddis, because Gaddis has been around this, at this level for a while. Obviously he was in a Final Four last year. And you got to utilize what you have. The Charlie Strongs, the Steels, Miraballs, everybody who's on this staff, even Coach Stroud, who's been around this for a long, long time. This is when you learn stuff. And I think that, with your receiver position, I think when they go out, and try to solidify this 23 class, I think they're going to be able to sell a lot. And especially because if you're a receiver and you saw last week's game, you go, wait a minute, I could come in and make a difference right away. And that's not a bad thing, but I'm sure they could do it at a lot of places. But you get an opportunity to play, in an offense like this, because Miami's got you got dudes, and just got to come together and keep the chemistry going and get depth. That's something that, fans, if you're listening, that's not coming overnight. It didn't come overnight for anybody. And, that's why you look at like schools like Florida and Florida State, they're getting more depth at some key positions. And, I mean, that's, there's a lot of luck involved in football. I mean, you win games, but, like the LSU game that FSU won and then Louisville, I mean, they could have easily been 1-2, and everybody looking at them in a different vein. And same thing with Miami. They could have come out of College Station with a W last week, and they'd be 3-0, and we wouldn't hear one damn word from anybody.
Yeah.
There's one wide receiver. He's a sleeper wide receiver that I've been a big fan of we're going on about 8-9 months now. And I've been kind of wondering why he's been floating under the radar just quite so much. And I wanted to get your take on him if you're familiar with him. It's Jeremiah Shack from Fleming Island.
I know him pretty well. Yeah, he's a kid who was at Mandarin. And then he made the move over. Yeah, he's really good player, great hands, tremendous route runner. The only question I had is he needs to learn how to block a little bit more. Where he's been one of those kids that we just talked about when he was younger. He had the speed and size where he didn't have to, exert himself as much. But now with Fleming Island, he's got a great quarterback he's working with and a really good offensive scheme. And at Miami, and the only thing you always worry about Jacksonville kids and kids up that area is there's just so many schools that are recruiting. You got Gainesville within an hour, and you've got all the Georgias and all those teams in the SEC. So, to come out with a kid from Jacksonville, you got to be extremely fortunate. And that's why coming away with Will Mallory the way they did was tough because, everybody wanted him. And, and like I said, he's the type of guy, I guess, at that next level. And everyone's going, damn, look at the size of that guy. Because he's got great size and he's got great speed. But to answer your question, Shaq would be a really good addition to the wide receiving core as well. They're looking at other guys outside the state as well. So, there's a lot to this recruiting process. And Miami's definitely, in on a lot of kids. And as the season goes by, you'll see a lot more movement.
Yeah. And, just to transition a little bit to tight ends, Miami taking 3 tight ends this class, all bring something different. Riley's, the main pass catcher in this class. But, you got Jackson Carver, you got Reed. All of them, like I said, just bring something unique to that room. Just because you've been able to watch him in person, how would you, describe Riley Williams as a player?
Freak of nature. I'm telling you what, that kid, I was so impressed with him. Athletically, he'll be the first kid that Miami's had in almost 25 years out of Oregon. Ironically, really, really good football player. Loves the game. He's quick. He's got so much room to put on weight and muscles and muscle weight. And I love him. I think he's as good as any tight end in this country, other than what Georgia has. But he's got a lot of potential to learn and be a great. He's an athletic kid, and that means that he could do a lot of things, and they're going to be able to experiment with him in a lot of different ways. And and Carver, as you mentioned, and then Reed McKeska. Both those guys are different types of tight ends, more blocking and maybe getting short upfield where Riley could get upfield a little bit more and maybe drag a linebacker with him and then open up things for the underneath game. And that's the one thing people don't realize, that, when you get all these different receivers, what it does is if they stretch the field like a Rambo, it helps Harley out, or it helps the running game out. Or if you're going to do a wheel route to Rooster or to anybody that's in the backfield, what he's going to do, a great receiver is going to clear out and get safety over the top in a corner. So there's 2 guys out of the way. So then you could, then your offensive coordinator sees that and go, wait a minute. Next time, let's run this guy here, or run a tight end drag across the middle, where it's going to be more open than it was, if you just have a regular Joe going out on pass patterns. So, yeah.
One tight end I also really like that I've been able to watch some film on is out of Northwestern, Adam Davis. He's someone that I know was got some love by the previous staff a little bit. just from watching him, he seems like someone that can play that tight end position, can also play out wide as a receiver. Are there any other sleepers in the South Florida area or just in Florida in general that you really like and you think can really produce at the college level that haven't been talked about enough?
Yeah, there are, but you know what? I think that for the 23 class, I think Miami's pretty much got what they're going to get, because you got to still you come in here and you still have Mammarelli and you still have Arroyo. I mean, you don't want to get too many guys where you're going to have a disgruntled room. I mean, because all of them could play. I mean, there's a really good tight end in the Sarasota area, but when I watched him, but he's not. Right now, I think Miami is more interested in trying to fill that linebacker position where they have a couple of kids that are on campus, but they want more. And, you look back to when Quarterman and Pinckney were here and you had really good frontline guys. You need that again. And I think that with somebody like a Wesley Basaint and a couple of the kids that are coming in this next class, you have that. So you don't want to kind of over recruit and you don't want people to be unhappy. You want to have a good mix. I mean, the kid Raul Aguirre, I think he's going to be really, really good. He's an aggressive type of player. Just watching him, I got a chance to watch him at a camp, and having a guy that will appeal to the Latin population down here. I think that's great. You need that. There haven't been a lot of those guys. So that's what you kind of the Malik Bryant kid, who I've watched a few times. And, sometimes I've been more impressed with him than others. I mean, he needs to play a lot more football. And, I mean, he's one of those guys that's always been bigger and stronger than everybody. But when he gets to the Power 5 level, that stuff don't play anymore. And a lot of kids fall by the wayside because they dominate at a smaller level. And I'm not going to take any shots at Manning, but you see the type of teams that he plays, at St. John Newman or wherever he goes in New Orleans area. Because if he played a South Florida schedule, if he had played Central and Northwestern and Booker T and Columbus and Heritage and Chaminade, he wouldn't be who everybody thinks he is. Believe me, but that's just the way it is. The reluctance to understand how powerful and how truthful South Florida football is. And that's why when you get a kid out of this area who's had an opportunity like Ray to go up against, Central and Booker T and all these teams, then you go, okay. I mean, it's sort of like, like in spring training when you play like all these, in these parks in South Florida or in Florida, they're all geared for major league parks. So if the minor league kids do good in those parks, then you say, okay, he's got something. And that's the way I feel about that situation, as far as playing in South Florida for football, because, there's just, as you were mentioning, you look at Columbus. I mean, they're stacked. I mean, they got, all the Capers kid, and they got all these guys that are really, really going to be good for the future. And they have to play against top level competition all the time. And that's why I think that when I hear people say, oh, South Florida is not there. Yeah, they are. I mean, you got 4 of the top 11 teams right now in the nation from South Florida.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned, I just speaking on that real quick. I know, Max Prep's latest rankings, I know they had, what was it, Central 4, STA 5, and then I think Chaminade 6, and then
Heritage.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane right now.
It is.
Yeah.
And like I said, and you look at, I'll tell you, I mean, if you really wanted to be nitpicky, I mean, you take a look at a Seminole, Sanford Seminole. I think they're as talented as anybody. And I would love to see them in Columbus in a state final game. I think that would be a marquee type of game. Trinity Christian with Webb and the other kid who's just a junior at running back for them. They're stacked. So, we dominate in South Florida, but there's other teams around the state that I think are pretty damn good. Edgewater, who beat the heck out of Don Bosco Prep of New Jersey, who has always been a juggernaut as far as national high schools. And when they had that Broward Challenge and everybody came down here, and in South Florida looked pretty damn good. with Heritage and Chaminade and St. Thomas, and obviously Western and Gibbons, who beat DeMatha and Dillard. So, yeah, we got some dudes. And remember, I mean, Cardinal Gibbons too. They're still until now. They got Heritage in a week, not this week, but next week. So we'll find out a lot about them then too.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned what's his name a little earlier, Bobby Washington.
Yes,
I saw him play against Killian, and I mean, wasn't able to, I guess, evaluate him that much just because Killian really avoided him.
Yeah.
But just from watching him play, I mean, just his range is incredible. He can obviously play some in the box as a traditional linebacker, but also kind of strong safety role.
Right.
Remember, Killian knows all about him too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Where do you see him, I guess, position-wise, projecting at the college level from what you've seen from Bobby?
Probably at that you mean Bobby the linebacker, right?
Yeah, Bobby Washington.
Yeah. I think he's going to play inside. I mean, because he's got some speed, and I'm telling you, he's a tough kid. I sold him short, and but I watched him, and he's learning how to do a lot of. He's reading plays a lot better. I don't know who's been working with him, but whoever's been working with him has, probably watching a lot of film and seeing where, especially when Coach Strong and I were watching him in the spring, he'd make the wrong reads, and then he'd step in the wrong hole, and then he found himself having to reach back because he overplayed a play. And it seemed like in that one game, I don't think he did that. Now he's got a test this week against Vero Beach, who is a very athletic team, and we'll see what happens. I think and he played Columbus last week, and from what I saw from the film, he did pretty well. Mm-hmm. So I think he's gonna be really good. He may be a project for the first year just because he has to pick up things, but from a physical standpoint, he's going to be as strong as anybody in that, in this class as far as that position.
Well, one thing I want to say is just for future reference, the idea of a Riley Williams and Jaleel Skinner set has me very excited.
You're right. I mean, I can't say enough about each one of them. They're big time kids. And, like I said, if Jaleel has proven himself to the point where he'll be in that lineup this week, against Middle Tennessee State, I think he has an opportunity to further show. I mean, that's what happens. You're given the opportunity. And then, like Van Dyke last year, you're given the opportunity. Jake Garcia was hurt, and Jake could have been in this position as well, but he was hurt at the time. You're given that opportunity, you shine, and you turn some heads, then all bets are off. Then you're entrenched. If Jaleel has a really good game this week, then they'll play him against North Carolina. And if he continues to get it done, then a lot of those other guys who were given the chance, they have no reason to complain because they've been given that opportunity. And if and I counted 6 or 7 drops last week, and and that's what I'm saying. You catch 4 or 5 of those, and it's a different game. Especially down inside. I mean, it's even Michael Redding, who I thought, I still think that Mike could be something special. But then again, if you don't get it done in the games, then no one wants to hear it.
Yep. There's a position I want to jump to here, offensive tackle, and it is a monster of a name, and it would be a name that if we add to alongside Malagoa and Tinalau, I will be a very happy man, and that's Samson Okunlola from Thayer Academy.
Yeah.
His size, athleticism, his bend, flexibility. I mean, is he what we really think he is? Is he the
he is. Where I think Malagoa is more of an Evan Neal who played at Alabama, big hands, heavy, big hands. I think he's in that mindset where he's going to get out there and no matter where they put him. He's got athleticism, and to me, bringing in alignment with athletic ability makes all the difference in the world. And I think that you take a look at somebody of his caliber, if Miami does sign him, he comes in, gets in here a little bit early, works out hard, gets up to par with the because remember that when you get from high school to college, it's a whole different ballgame from the strength standpoint, because you have a lot of these linemen that have been working who are going to be seniors or juniors who've been working for 4 years, at this level with this weight room, with this, with this type of, way to get a lot bigger and a lot stronger in these different programs. So, yeah, I think he'd be a great get. Miami's in their big company there, though. He has like 3 or 4 really good schools thinking the same thing that we are.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Sampson. I had the chance to talk to his coach there, and he just mentioned how, he's just a super quick learner, everything you want in an offensive tackle coming out of high school. We know about his work ethic. It's apparent. And you mentioned, interior offensive line, Connor Liu. I think he's someone that really, Ja'Kai Clark is doing a great job holding down that center position.
Yeah.
I feel like the O-line really took off last year, more so on pass protection, but really took off when Ja'Kai got inserted into the starting lineup. I see Connor as, the next guy in that center room. What have you liked from him? And then what have you liked from someone like an Antonio Tripp, who's just been killing it at IMG?
Yeah, Antonio Tripp's a big guy. Yeah, Lou is very athletic. He's a guy that, he can handle basically every position on that offensive line. And the center position, especially at the collegiate level, is probably like a left-handed pitcher. It's more of an access to the next level, because if you're a really good center, there's not a whole lot of great centers, agile centers, athletic centers. And those are the ones that usually get drafted, especially if you watch the NFL draft, and a lot of these guys that you've never heard of before. Oh my God, I didn't know that so-and-so had that guy. Wow. And he goes in the first round. It's because of the fact that those kids mature. They're taken when nobody really looks at them, or maybe they're overweight or something is, not clicking. But there's also guys, and I've seen a billion times where coach goes, well, I could get a lot out of him. Yeah, but that don't always work out. If he's lazy there, he's going to be lazy with you. So, sooner or later his true colors will form. But yeah, I think you're right. Lou's going to be good. Tripp's got great size. If you watch his footwork, it's really, really good, crisp. And all these guys coming in, every one of them, the only thing that separates them from being really good at this next level is experience.
The next one I want to get us to here, we're going to probably kind of move through a little quicker here, just because we hit our hour mark. I didn't even realize that already. I'm going to go to the defensive line here. David Hicks, 5-star out of Texas. Everybody knows him. He's the big name and stuff. I'm not sure how realistic that is for Miami, but of course we have to say a guy, and I'm going to list him exactly how he wants to be listed, is a defensive lineman / defensive end, Ruben Bain. How truly important is it to get Ruben Hurricane Bain at the University of Miami?
It's very important. A local kid who is a 5-star type of player who could play anywhere. I don't care who it is, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, he could play there. And you just got to guard against, when he, goes on a couple of visits, and, there's going to be a lot of people saying, you know what, you can stay home and toil for a couple of years at Miami. You can play for a national title. Depends what he wants to do. Depends how much he believes in what Miami's doing. And I think he does. But, I couldn't guarantee it. I wish he would make his decision up sooner than later. But you know what? He's that type of guy. He's been out with concussions and he's been hurt. And so he hasn't really played a whole lot. But when he gets in there, like in that IMG game, he more than showed what he was about.
There's one player that's kind of been flying under the radar a little bit, and he had Miami in his top schools here just recently. and that's Andrew Rump from Palmetto. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not so. I don't think, he's okay. I don't think Miami is going to bend over backwards to get a guy like that when there's other outstanding talent. I mean, he's a good player, but Miami's got to get more than good players at this point. They got to get guys that are just going to tip the scales and are going to be just really, really special, like a Bain, or as you mentioned, a couple of the other kids that are out there, like Hicks and players like that as well.
And there's just one sleeper, and he's a player I just want to bring up for the simple fact that I feel he's been kind of disrespected, and I'm not quite sure why Miami didn't think of him as much, especially moving him from defensive end to defensive line. But that's Wilkie Denard. Is that a player you're familiar with?
Yeah, from John Carroll up in Fort Pierce.
Athletic,
Yeah, Wilkie, I've been watching since he was in the 8th grade. He's a great athlete, outstanding. Coach Byram, his head coach, is from St. Thomas Aquinas, and he's had some pretty good time. And I know that he's looking at it. I think he's committed to somebody right now. But he's he'd be a good get. But Miami really stepped up on. They really didn't look after him, and I'm sure the interest is kind of lukewarm to cold, from his standpoint.
What about moving on to edge here? We got a big name here. Samuel Mpemba out of IMG. I mean, is he looking past Miami, do you think? Is he looking somewhere else, SEC possibly?
Well, his teammates at IMG are kind of like reminding him that it'd be good to be playing with Miami and, remaining friends and stuff. But, yeah, he's a big-time kid. And I had him, rated last year in the top 5 as a junior. So, I mean, he's one of the best in the nation, no doubt. He's got an opportunity to be really special. I don't know if Miami would be in the lead right now. At one point, they were in the mix, but we'll see how some of his IMG teammates can do some good recruiting for Miami, because that's all part of it too. And, that's why kids sometimes transfer or go to other schools, because they have so much fun being with their teammates. And, hopefully they can extend their IMG relationship down to Coral Gables.
Another athletic player here who's got a little bit more technique, in my opinion, and already established, Damon Wilson from Venice. That's a guy that Miami's been going after. Would that be a prize get on the
huge get? Yeah. He's a monster. He's very fast off the line. I watched him last year in the state championship game. Saw him at 2 camps this summer, although he didn't work out at one of them. But big guy. Quick, reads plays extremely well. He's just bigger than everybody else, and that's why he's been successful.
And of course, I got to end it off at edge here with the Miami commit guy from my region, the Northwest, Jaden Wayne. I'm happy to see him down at IMG. Maybe not just give me your take on Wayne, but maybe give me your take on what you feel IMG can do to help him improve as a player coming from the Pacific Northwest.
He's a tough kid. I mean, and it kind of shocked me that, just as soon as he committed to Miami, he went from a 5 to 4 star, which makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, you watch him, his first step, quick off the ball, long arms. I don't see anything but great things. And he's just going to get refined when he gets down here. I mean, IMG could teach him so much, and he's going to maximize his talent. But once he gets down here and starts working with college coaches, you're going to see how quick he blows up, because of the fact that he's the total package now as a physical specimen. I watched him I never saw him live, but I watched him on film, and you could just tell he just comes off the ball so quickly. I mean, he overmatches people because of his speed and his long reach, and he anticipates really well. And I was like, the day that they made him a 4-star, I kind of laughed. I go, nah, this kid's just as good as as he ever was. And yeah, he's very talented.
Yeah. And then, just real quick, end off on DBs. So the matchup that I was, most excited for heading into the Shaman Heritage game last Friday was Damari Brown versus Jeremiah Smith. And I mean, that matchup delivered. I mean, because they both got some wins in that. I mean, Jeremiah had that hitch route in the first quarter on Damari. Then he had, of course, that slant for a touchdown. I mean, but Damari did his thing as well. He had those two, big time pass breakups in the end zone. And I mean, the first time I've been able to see Damari live, just seems like such a physical corner. And it just seems like he really fits what Miami's looking for in their cornerbacks, players who can play and press, help in the run game a little bit. I know he had that huge hit in the I'm what I'm talking about. So I guess just your thoughts, I guess, overall on Damari Brown, since I guess now he has a real opportunity to shine this year in a heritage defense backroom that was crowded in years before.
Miami's got to make him a priority. I mean, he's a beast. I mean, I sat with I saw you on the sideline. I was like 6 feet from him pretty much the whole game. And then when I went over on the other side, I watched him a little bit more. But I had seen him play before. I just think he's gotten more physical. You got to remember, over at Heritage, he's got Darryl Porter, the father of Darryl Porter on Miami, who played in the NFL, played at Boston College, great defensive back, although he was a running back in high school at St. Thomas. But he's taught him so much, especially, I mean, you can't teach people to be physical. That has to come from within inside, but you could teach them to be more technically sound. And that's what he is. I mean, he'll jam you at the line. He's really athletic. And I think he needs guys to be a priority in this next class. I think Miami's working very hard to get him. It would be really, because they, other than Nesta Silvera, they don't do extremely well with getting the Heritage kids. So hopefully they'll land him, and he'll be a difference maker. Certainly somebody who I think is maybe 2 years away from getting in there and with an extensive playing time. And the only thing in the first year, he's just got to sit and learn from some of the people. But maybe because Miami might be thinner at the position, he may be able to come in and really compete for playing time.
Speaking of cornerback, I just actually would like to get your opinion on a player who's not picked up right now by anybody, who I think has some talent. And maybe you could explain why. And that's Ethan Nation. Do you think he's just waiting and because he's got, 50?
Yeah, he's got a lot of offers, and
yeah.
I mean, he's a quality football talent, and I think deep down inside he probably knows where he's going to go.
Okay.
I think he's just waiting, just to make sure of his decision. But yeah, he's a big time kid. I wouldn't expect he'd be here, to be honest with you. I just think that his mind is somewhere else. I've watched him. My buddy of mine covers them, and he's told me a lot about him. He's just a physical kid. He's a very agile guy. He's technically sound. So those three combinations will add up to getting him maybe to a different school.
And, we were going to end this off at cornerback, but I can't skip this category because it's so special here, and it's under.
You can have me back again. I promise. I'll come back again.
It's all good. It's all good. We'll cover athlete real quick and just call it good here, man. Nicholas Harbor. What kind of a special player are we talking about at 6'5" that run track like a lightning bolt?
Yeah, well, very, like they say, you can't teach 6'5". And, I mean, when you look at athletes of that caliber, of that talent, I think Miami's been on him for a long, long time. And, I had heard his name early in the process. I mean, of all the names in Miami's probably, they don't even let out a lot of kids that they're really going after. Yeah. I mean, I know colleges have that, they have that method towards their madness, and they'll release kids that they, want to get the information out that they're interested in. And then there's other kids that they don't want anybody to know that they're going after, because, that's like playing possum a little bit. And then all of a sudden you come in at the end and, get him. Like, that's how they got John Beeson back in the day. They waited for John's last visit, and he became the only player to come in the last weekend, he and his mom. And, he was all Georgia. Georgia had promised him running back position. He wanted to play running back. And then all of a sudden he came in at the end. But Nation's the same way, a quality guy. let's see what happens. Miami's staying in the game, and that's the important thing. If you remain in the game, you're recruiting. I think Miami's recruiting is as good as it's been, and you have somebody like Mario Cristobal who can close with the best of them.
I got one guy left for you. It's a Miami commit. We talked about his brother already, and that's Robbie Washington.
Yeah.
Robbie adds something different. He's a different type of player than Bobby. What does Robbie add?
Well, Robbie's a kid who's quick, electric, kick returner, punt returner, slot. Excuse me. Could play him in running back if you need. He's an exciting player. Watched his dad. Basically, he brings more to the table than his dad because he could play like 5-6 different positions. Yeah. You get him and then Ray in that same class, and there's two kids that are going to torture defenses for a long time.
Yeah. It's a pretty amazing, the story of Robbie and Bobby with their dad being a 5-star recruit himself. Yeah. And actually, there was one thing I wanted to say before we're going to jump off air here in just a second. Before we did, I'm curious. When I found out the news that Likens had never actually had a conversation with Nathaniel Joseph, that struck me as absolutely crazy. When you got that news, were you just kind of blown away?
Yeah, well, and knowing that Likens is, he's a guy that's coached some pretty high-level guys before. Yeah. He had 2 NFL first-round draft picks. You know what? And it may not have only been on him. It may have been on, maybe Lashley or Manny, who say, you know what, we're going in a different direction. So I can't blame it on them. I often don't want to blame anybody unless I know where the source is. But on the surface, you're 100% right. It is kind of crazy.
Well, man, Larry, I just appreciate you taking this time. We were running it a little later than we thought we were going to run it, but heck, man, when we're talking about stuff like this and recruiting, I just keep going and going and going, dude. And I'm so glad that I got a chance to finally sit down with you and get your input on some of this because, man, I've been a big fan of yours for a long, long time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And Luke, I know you and I will see plenty of each other on the sidelines, and I appreciate you guys having me on, and have a great evening. And if there's anything we ever could do, just let me know.
Yeah. Sounds good. We'll stay in touch.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Canes fans. That is the legend himself. That is Larry Blustein. It was great to have him on. Great to get some input. I know we ran the show a little later than usual, but, this guy's just got golden input. And then when we're talking about recruiting, we just start talking about recruiting, guys. Sorry. It's just we love this stuff. Luke, once again, thank you, dude, for joining me on this. Every Wednesday night, guys, the Crude on the U, brought to you by the Scoop on the U. Once again, we had Larry Blustein on tonight. If you didn't get a chance to see it earlier, watch that from the beginning because it is full of nothing but gems. This guy is the connection down in the South Florida region and a little bit outside of Florida as well. So thank you to the fans that tuned in. And as always, it's all about the U. Go Canes.